but not the least is Edmund Chung. I think most of us know him. He's a social innovator and entrepreneur. Edmund is currently serving as a CEO of Asia, and he's on the executive committee of Internet Society of Hong Kong, the board of Make a Difference Institute, and heads the Secretariat of Asia Pacific Regional Internet Governance Forum, that is APR IGF. Edmund served on the founding board Internet Governance, continued to support its secretariat, co-founded the annual Hong Kong Kids International Film Festival, and participate extensively on the internet governance and social innovation matters. He is an inventor of various patents on IDN groups that made possible the introduction of multilingual domain names and email addresses on internet. He is presently working on the ICANN board with 25 years of attachment experience on multilingual and IDN. He is the most experienced in ICANN community on IDN. Let us welcome Edmund to this August gathering. And now I hand over the panel to Chair Sally.
Can you hear me? Oh, I need to move the microphone. Right, okay. Thank you very much for that wonderful introduction. So what we're going to do on this panel is what Jerong said in his introductory comments. He says the devil is in the detail. And that's what we're going to talk about on this panel, which is the critical and important step of how do we actually look at the technology enablement for UA. What is the world going to need to do? What is it going to need to do differently? And how can we, as in our awareness raising activities and in the many different organizations that we represent, support the process of encouraging this critical step in the process. And this is the key for connecting the non-ASCII, the non-Latin user, internet user, to the power of the internet. And as we have discussed already extensively today, not everything is available. If it was, we wouldn't be here. But just having good intentions isn't enough. It's now considered, UA is now considered a technical compliance best practice, which is major progress. But it is a challenging task. There are many people involved in that technology enablement that don't come to Internet Governance Fora, that don't come to ICANN meetings, that are not part of the domain name system, and they don't come across this information in their everyday life. And if those potential internet users don't know that they could use the internet, if only their script was enabled, they won't come and tell them. So we have to help that discussion to happen more quickly and more efficiently. And we need a concerted effort driven by industry to make UA readiness. And I'm so grateful to have this esteemed panel together this morning. And I'm looking forward to our discussion on the successes and challenges as we work together. So I'm going to hand over to Santosh, who's going to moderate. Santosh.
Thank you, Sally, for your opening remarks on this session, which is on technology enablement for universal acceptance, what are the challenges and mitigation. So in order to have universal acceptance होने के लिए क्या टेक्नोलॉजी enablement होना चाहिए और इसका क्या challenges हैं इसके बारे में हमारे यहाँ पे पैनल डिस्कशन होगा। तो पहले कैसे universal acceptance किया जाए, इसके लिए क्या steps हैं। So during the introductory session, it was mentioned there are 5 pillars. I hope you people remember that. So it starts with पहले तो acceptability होना चाहिए। आपका email ID और domain name accept होना चाहिए, except browser पे होना चाहिए। यदि browser पे एक आदमी को टाइप भी करना चाहिए। So that is the enablement part of the universal acceptance. So without taking much time, I would go to the first panelist over here, who is Mr. Balindu Sharma Dadich, who is the director local languages of Microsoft. Over to you, Mr. Balindu. And you have 12 minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. The session chair, Sally, Mr. T. Santosh, Mr. Chung, Mr. Kumar Jain, Mr. Ajay Data, and all of you friends. I was very happy when Mr. T. Santosh talked a bit in Indian languages like Hindi, because we all know that these languages, they are not only part of our culture, very inseparable part of our culture, but our identity as well. In India, we say that कोस par badle pani, char कोस par badle bani. So languages are that important to us, as important as water is. And at the same time, this also reflects the diversity of our culture, our country, our languages. Like in every 2 or 3 kilometers, the taste of water changes. And every 5 kilometers or so, a language changes in India. So that's the kind of depth that we have in India as far as the languages are concerned. We at Microsoft often underline the fact that there is no limit to what people can achieve if technology reflects the diversity of everyone who uses it. I look at universal acceptance from that perspective and consider it as a means to ensure a level playing field across the technology space, including the internet, for people coming from diverse regional, cultural, linguistic, and scripting backgrounds. Just like there cannot be and should not be any monopoly over knowledge, the power of technology is also meant to benefit everyone across the globe. Universal acceptance, in that sense, is a fundamental right of every digital citizen. However, the world is full of diversities and complexities, where every language and every script has its own distinct features and characteristics. And it is not very easy to create systems that ensure universalities while diligently following the nitty-gritties of the workings of the languages and the scripts themselves. The challenges become multifold when we consider the many writing systems used by one language and one writing system used by many languages. The Devanagari script is used by more than 10 languages, and Manipuri speaking people may use different scripts including Devanagari, Bengali, Meitei, and sometimes even Assamese. Then most scripts are written from left to right, while some others are written from right to left. Not only this, people may use internet on different kind of devices and different operating systems. On top of this, there are use cases when we use a language technology without any kind of visual representation, like the speech-based systems and in some programming scenarios. A significant number of technology users come from disability space also. So it is important that universal acceptance also embraces accessibility. It is crucial for us to evaluate if a blind person can use screen readers to access IDNs and EAIs, and can he or she input the required characters using things like the dictation command. This is because the working environment as well as preferences and needs of people are constantly changing. Now, what makes me happy is that we have taken firm steps towards addressing some of these challenges, technically, administratively, and socially. The UA journey essentially means that every device, every software, and every service should be able to support IDNs, and EAIs in terms of accepting input, validating input, processing input, storing the information provided by that input, being able to process the output and display in the language desired by the user. However, before UA becomes a reality, if it comes into the picture, even before that, the operating system has to ensure that the user can input text in the language of his or her choice. Also, issues such as proper internet connectivity, low specification phones, and lower power productivity or availability, they are also linked with the broader issue of universal acceptance. So we at Microsoft, we have released the Outlook Lite mobile application, which supports local languages and which addresses such limitations of the people at the grassroots level. The application is less than 5 MB in size. It works on low battery, and it's optimized for low internet bandwidth conditions as well. Thanks to the efforts of the global and regional stakeholders, such as the ICANN, UASG, NICSI, and the Ministry of IT in India, we have been able to find answers to most of the perplexing questions and issues, though we need to still ensure their implementation across the ecosystem and bring all important stakeholders on board. These are stakeholders who have a role in creation, provision, management, maintenance, implementation, facilitation, support, and usage of IDNs and EAIs. This is because we need UA support on every operating system, every digital device, every software, every browser, every search engine, every website, including those in the e-commerce, e-governance, and e-education spaces, every digital document, every social media platform, every digital communication system, each collaboration platform, and so on. So you can understand the kind of challenge that we have in front of our eyes. Microsoft, as a proud member of the Universal Access Steering Group, has taken required steps towards ensuring UA support in our ecosystem, our products and services. As I mentioned earlier, it is a journey, and there will be issues which will continue to be dealt with. However, we stand committed to partner with the ICANN, UASG, NICSI, and the Ministry to contribute towards the development of ecosystem where universal access finds its rightful place. Let me give you some glimpses of our products and how they support UA. I'll take just 30 seconds for that. First of all, you can see that this is the Edge browser. We have implemented IDN support in Edge browser, so now you can just type in any Indian language and you will be able to open that website which uses the .bharat domain. If I come to programming languages, there are proper libraries in place. As far as Visual Studio is concerned, you can leverage these libraries. For example, if you can see in the right side, IDN to ASCII, IDN to Unicode, etc., etc. So these libraries are available, and developers can take advantage of these to support IDNs and EAIs in their own systems. If I come to Outlook, you can see that we can now send and receive mails from IDN or EAI. So we can receive as well as send mails from these email addresses. So that is another support that is there. And it is very easy to implement that in Outlook. There are 3-4 steps that I can show here. And finally, I come to Office 365. One simple example I'll give you. There are a few websites that use IDN, and you can see that when you go to Microsoft Word or other Microsoft products, we have tried to ensure that the system identifies that this is a domain name. Even though it is in Hindi language, it could be in any other Indian language. So I'll just click on one of these and then I'll end. So you can see that if I click on any of these, I'll go to the browser and it will open the website intended. So that's it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Balandu ji, for that insights on the technological as well as the challenges faced in IDNs. Now, the next speaker in this panel is Mr. Edmund Chen, who is ICANN board member and a social innovator and entrepreneur. So as mentioned by Mr. Anil Kumar Jain, he is very active in this internet governance and also leading in IDNs, that is internationalized domain names sphere at ICANN. Over to you, Edmund.
Thank you, and thank you very much for having me. As Anil and Santosh mentioned, that this is a topic that I am I'm very passionate about and have been working for the last 25 years on. Actually, just to add to it a little bit, you know, this morning, sitting in the audience, having this first UA day, actually, you know, I feel quite emotional about it with a lot of the work that I have put in place. But more importantly, this is the kind of work that we all need to work together on to make happen. Another thing that I find really interesting today, I'm here to, I guess, report a little bit on ICANN's work internally. What Sally mentioned in terms of ICANN, or the organization itself, the systems and the IT systems that ICANN operates and its UA readiness. For those of you at ICANN, you will find it, why I find it kind of interesting, because for many years, I have been sitting on the community side and pushing ICANN and criticizing ICANN in some ways for such slowness in IDN adoption and UA universal acceptance readiness. But here I am, given the job to present how ICANN, the organization, is doing. But I must say, this is actually, you know, for those of you who understand, especially to participate at ICANN, this is a kind of feature of ICANN. Outside of ICANN, we certainly work very closely together as one, and this is one of the things that is important for universal acceptance as well. As you know, towards the end, I'll come back to this a little bit, but universal acceptance is really something, the details are very important, you know, and also working together to make this happen is very important. So, back in, for ICANN itself, the organization itself, the work really started when the UASG was formed, I would argue to say. The Universal Acceptance Steering Group was formed in 2015. And I was one of the founding vice chairs at that time. And immediately on its founding, actually, one of the key things that the steering group pushed for is the deployment of universal acceptance at the ICANN systems. So since 2015, there was a big push from the community for ICANN to become UA ready. ICANN itself really started the deployment around 2016 and 2017 timeframe, and started giving different reports on the progress of ICANN's own deployment for universal acceptance. For ICANN as an organization, I want to emphasize that IDN and UA is firmly a priority, and it's firmly in ICANN's strategic plan currently for 2021 to 2025. It's one of it's a very important part of one of the 5 pillars of that strategic plan. And for ICANN, universal acceptance is not just about promoting, and you know, of course it's important. UA Day and promotion of awareness is very important, but it's also important for the organization itself, because you know, I guess we all must drink our own Kool-Aid, right? If ICANN itself doesn't get UA ready, you know, how do we convince other companies to do that? So what is interesting, I guess, in between 2016 and 2019 was really a few years where ICANN, as an organization, started to look down the path of how to get all the systems UA ready. And what is interesting to say, and going back to the devil in the details, is that I still remember, again, putting my hat on from the community, I still remember the first time ICANN's report on now we are going to become UA ready. They actually put out a plan and said, we're going to do this in 9 months. I was sitting in the audience saying, I don't think that's possible. Maybe it needs 9 years. But it was very clear. They think, it's going to be a quick fix, this, easy fix. But the second meeting that the report comes down, that changed a lot. So the first few months that ICANN actually started working on the issue, a lot of realization happened. First of all, of course, a quick fix for specific issues is possible. But the tail end of it, the long tail of UA readiness, takes a much longer approach, and it takes a multi-dimensional approach. One of the things that is most important is ICANN, and I think most organizations, if you look down the path of universal acceptance, you realize that you have systems that are off the shelf. We are buying other people's systems. Those are systems that you cannot change immediately. You have systems, of course, that are built in-house that can be updated. But if your vendor is not updating it, then that's, you can't complete universal acceptance in a particular short period of time. So one of the first things that ICANN as the organization realized is that it is a multidimensional issue, and the first things that a stock-taking process need to take place. What was really interesting and really interesting for the community to then see is that there are over 80 systems in the ICANN IT and infrastructure, and all of them relates to some ways for the domain names and email addresses. I mean, that's no surprise, right? ICANN itself is coordinating the unique identifiers. So first of all, what needs to be done is to categorize systems into off-the-shelf systems, and that we need to work with vendors on, and then in-house systems or customized systems. Customized systems you also need to work with vendor on, and then in-house systems that need to be dealt with. So there are 3 areas and 3 different really funnels to actually get UA readiness happen. And then what ICANN then worked on, and actually one of the exciting parts of this report that I'm giving is that it's also encapsulated in a case study that you can find at the UASG website. So do take a look at it, especially for larger organizations who are looking to do UA deployment. These are some of the learnings and experience that are really important. So what ICANN did was also to organize the roadmap of UA universal acceptance into 3 phases and 3 stages. The 3 phases, first of all, is to get the processing of IDNs, internationalized domain names, for systems outside of ICANN to be supporting UA ready, and then for systems internally to support UA readiness, and then for systems to talk to each other that are UA ready. Those are the 3 kind of phases. And then the 3 stages, which UASG has picked up and uses as well. Stage 1 being the support of new short and long ASCII-based alphanumeric TLDs. Stage 2 being support of internationalized domain names, IDNs. And stage 3 being the support for email address internationalization. So what I really wanted to emphasize is that from the ICANN experience, I think much could be learned, and a lot of things can be taken out with very useful as you look into UA deployment. So there's really major difficulty in managing and working with software developers. On one hand, the vendors may or may not have a UA roadmap, and therein lies some of the awareness that is important, how governments can lean in to create procurement processes. And this is also what ICANN has done, is to have in the procurement processes that to require software vendors to give a roadmap, even if you're not already UA ready, what is the roadmap going forward? And then there are open source systems, right? Open source systems is another kind of animal that need to be dealt with. So it's not just the vendor, it has to be the community. The open source community needs to adopt some of the changes in order for the systems to become UA ready. And some of the things like mailman or send mail or those type of systems need to be in place as well. So, and then finally, of course, there are to look at potential alternatives, right? If a particular vendor is not willing to put a UA roadmap in place, maybe alternatives need to be looked into. So as I kind of conclude, one of the key learning, I think, is to think about developing a roadmap, do stock taking about the systems that you are running, and also it is very important to take a kind of a multi-dimensional approach, different phases, different stages of UA readiness. Yes, perhaps this could be done, very quickly, but I think it's probably going to take a little bit more time than what you think. It's going to take, as I started earlier, ICANN first thought it was going to be done by 9 months, but actually, I really hope that ICANN, in fact, right now, in terms of the progress, we're looking at it being completed in 9 years. I said that, and the reason why is that one of the things that ICANN is working on is the new generic top-level domains. And this is also a driver for ICANN, inside ICANN itself, to have systems ready. Because the new generic top-level domains, we're expecting a lot of IDN top-level domains to come in. So the system for accepting new generic top-level domains better be UA ready. And in fact, ICANN has made that commitment in the recent, what is called ODA, the Operation Design Analysis document that was put out for the next round of new GTLDs, a commitment to have the systems ready by the time the new GTLDs round come along. And that's where, I think we will see kind of the light at the end of the tunnel. We are seeing that already, and we are seeing ICANN getting to the finish line in a couple of years' time. And I think that is an important learning, is to think about the roadmap and don't underestimate the time needed. But I do also think that the time needed will be shorter over time. Why? Because more other systems, more vendors will become UA ready, and you are part of that. And this is why we have the UA Day. And I think, UA is a really interesting thing that really loves company, because together we can upgrade the internet much faster, and this is a movement that we will definitely be stronger together. And as I've started one of the discussion about the community at ICANN that often criticizes ICANN, it's actually that criticism is very important, and that's really the kind of participation that is needed. And when we talk about universal acceptance, this gives us an opportunity to really rally together in solidarity around the world. And it is not just the ICANN community that's important. I'm speaking on behalf of from the ICANN community. But in order for universal acceptance to actually make it work, we need all people, including users, including software developers, including governments, to work together to make this happen. And I truly hope that this is not just about universal acceptance. In fact, this is an opportunity for us in the internet community to keep the internet together, because language and the ability to reflect native language and your names in your language is fundamental to really a network for people. We always talk about a threat for internet fragmentation. We hope, and I hope, that universal acceptance is actually an opportunity for that glue to pull the internet back together so that we can support the next billion to come online. Thank you.
Thank you, Edmund, for that insight of challenges and also the ICANN work related to universal acceptance, which you had mentioned to the august audience over here. So now I would request the chair to give questions to each panelist.
Thank you very much, Santosh. Thank you both for excellent, very interesting presentations. And I'd like to start with you, if I might, from Microsoft Belendu. I'm maybe going to ask you, I'll give you a bit of warning, Edmund, because I'm going to ask you both a very similar question, a big question. So we're here today, and you know they use the term, we're preaching to the converted. Yeah? So the fact that people have gathered today tells us that they already understand the concept of universal acceptance and they're supportive of it. But inside, of course, Microsoft making these decisions and making these changes was fundamental, because the world relies in so many ways on your products and services, and the internet has been constructed in so many ways that it's integrated in almost every area. And I was very excited and encouraged to see your progress. But in that journey, inside Microsoft, what has been the hardest conversation? What has been the toughest nut to crack?
Yeah, thank you for that question, Sally. And your question is regarding the hardest nut to crack inside Microsoft as far as the question of implementing UA is concerned. So you know that we are there for almost 4 decades, and we have very old legacy systems as well as the new systems, and there is a constant race to develop something new. But at the same time, the challenge that is there is that how can we bring our old or legacy systems up to the speed with the changes that are happening today. For example, universal acceptance, that is one area which requires us to work on so many fronts across the ecosystem. For example, when we send an email to somebody and the email is in Indian language, the email address is in Indian language, then that email has to pass through so many different systems. It is easy to make a particular product follow a particular rule, but it is very difficult to make sure that the entire ecosystem from wherever that email passes, that also follows that approach. So that is, I think, that is the biggest challenge that we faced, but we, since we were committed to make sure that universal acceptance is part of Microsoft's ecosystem, we worked on that for a few years. And in fact, you are aware that we worked very deeply with the UASG as well as ICANN to make sure that it is possible. So that is the most important and most challenging thing that we have faced. But I would also say that since we have a commitment towards people at large, because these products, as I mentioned during my speech also, that universal access and being able to input text is a fundamental right for every digital citizen. So we cannot ignore these kind of questions, which are fundamental to the very access of internet.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very honest, and I feel myself in some of those meetings inside Microsoft and people putting their heads in their hands saying, do you realize how hard this is? But you make such an important point. I like that expression very much, that access is a right, is a basic human right, that being able to use the internet to communicate, and your role in that. And Edmund, you've been a great advocate of exactly, I think, the same principle. And those 25 years, I think it's driven you forward. So my question to you is similar. You were very open in your comments about when you were in the community, which of course you still are, but you're also on the ICANN board, now you wear 2 hats. and I can remember a lot of those meetings where you were very strong and clear about change. What do you think the tipping point was?
Well, so building on what you were asking, what was a difficult nut to crack, I think that cracking that nut is a bit of a tipping point. The toughest thing in my mind is there is a market failure for the last 10 years. The market failure is that there are not enough people who are demanding IDNs and EAI, email address internationalization. Why? Because the users don't even know, right? And so the market side, the registries and registrars are saying, oh, there's not much demand, but the problem is the user doesn't even know, and therefore it doesn't create the demand. But also, the other thing is, because the registries and registrars are not fully ready for universal acceptance, once a registrant registers an IDN, where do they host it? How do they get email? They couldn't fully use the name, so they drop the name and then resort back to ASCII. And I think the tipping point is actually pushing UA forward with some market intervention, because when there's market failure, you need a little bit of intervention, and that intervention comes in the form of UASG pushing ICANN itself to become UA ready. Once ICANN's own systems become UA ready, then the push to the world becoming UA ready makes a lot more sense. And the next push, of course, building on ICANN's procurement process, is the procurement process for different governments or different large organizations. That will create a trickle-down effect that could actually break that nut and create that tipping point. I think the tipping point is really realizing that we got to make sure that we are UA ourselves before we can actually promote it, and that makes the message much more convincing.
Yes, very true, Edmund. And I think to summarize, and I'm going to hand back to Santosh, and I think we'll take some questions from the floor. But you raise another very interesting point, which hasn't really come up this morning, but it's something maybe we can discuss as the day goes on, is the role of consumer demand. Now, this is something, of course, Microsoft knows a lot about, an enormous amount about. I mean, it's your business. And yet, I think you make an excellent point. Certainly, as I can, you don't go out and campaign for something until you're ready, you've put your own house in order, which is your point. But I also think now, maybe, and I say this with caution, we're reaching a critical mass with UA Day, that this is now the next step. We need to start to do much more as different organizations all around the world to start to wake consumers up to what they're missing. And that will create traditional market pressure of the type that you're describing. And with that, Santosh, over to you.
Yeah. So thank you, Sally. Now, can we have one question, please? Actually, we are running late. 25 minutes late. So the same person is asking the question. Can we have any other person?
No, it's okay. No, I think he wants to speak. It's okay.
Yeah, so yes, the same.
Good afternoon, respected panel. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Alakshendra Jaswal. My question to the panel is, as Balindu sir rightly mentioned, that it is not just the language that we have to include to make universal acceptance or a digital economy which has to be inclusive to all people. We have to also include disabled people there. As Accessible India campaign mentioned that the accessibility should also be provided to disabled people. We have a good chunk of websites which do not have accessibility features for the disabled people. So how are we going forward in countering that and providing access to the disabled people who cannot read and who are actually blind, who are visually impaired? How are we going forward by countering that?
So what is universal acceptance? It is basically accepting the internet identifiers. It is not the content part. जो हम बात कर रहे हैं वो है इंटरनेट आइडेंटिफायर, यानी कि नाम यानी कि डोमेन नेम्स और आईपी एड्रेस नंबर्स यानी कि आईपी एड्रेसेस. तो हाउ the names are displayed in the URL or the browser, as well as how the email IDs are displayed in the respective language. So the main concentration is on that only, that is domain names as well as email addresses in the local language. The topic which you are raising is accessibility, in which the Bhashini, as the CEO was here, he has mentioned. So in the Bhashini, this is being taken. Sally, would you like to add anything on this?
Thank you. I think it's very important, again, that we set a good example, and ICANN's websites have been through a major overhaul in the last few years to make sure that they're as accessible as they can be. And I think it's a very good point you make as we get back to the roadmap that Edmund's talking about, as we put every single asset, if you like, digital asset, as well as every system and program that we're running through that filter of UA compliance. I think it's a good opportunity to have another look at those in the light of multilingual accessibility for disability as well as disability itself. And for other organisations like ICANN, which is most big organisations, you're quite right. I'm sure this is part of a general awareness raising exercise. Santosh is right. The actual technical description of universal acceptance doesn't cover content, but that doesn't mean that these are the kinds of issues that absolutely make the real difference between people being able to access the power of the internet or not. So thank you for raising it.
So if I may add something here. Actually, I also believe that even though universal access means that we need to make sure that Indian language and other local language domain names and email addresses are available and they are supported across the technology ecosystem. But at the same time, when we speak from a person with disabilities perspective, the person needs to input text in the URL address bar, right? At the same time, the person also needs to input the text in email address bar. So whether there the support is available or not, that is the question. Because the person, for example, a person with blindness is unable to see whether what he's typing or not. So there must be a system that makes sure, that tells that person that yes, what you have written in the address bar is right. For example, the person wants to type nixi.bharat, but whether it is nixi.bharat or not. Or can we support that person in different ways? For example, he can speak nixi.bharat and the URL address bar automatically supports that, like the text gets typed over there. So the person knows that it is right and he reaches the destination. There is a challenge here at present because the dictation systems that we have seen, many of them, presently they support the documents. Like you can speak in a document and it gets typed, but maybe that support might not be available in the address bar where IDNs are to be inputted. So that is a very valid question, but we have to address that and that is very important. As far as the content part is concerned, because it is extremely important that after UA after we have implemented universal access, what next? So the content comes here into picture. And the content is for everyone, including people speaking Indian languages, people coming from the disability background also. So we have to make sure that all the websites which are there, not only they are universal access compliant, but at the same time they are also accessible. And we know that in Government of India, there is an order that all the government websites will be accessibility compliant. And you must have seen that the Ministry of Social Justice has taken a lot of steps in that direction. For example, recently, the Ministry of, actually MITI itself had organized one contest for startups to develop a system through which accessibility of a website can be evaluated and supported, whether the address bar supports a particular language or not, whether a person, when the person comes to a web page, there is an image, whether he can use the screen reader with that image or not, whether there is in the background alt text has been provided or not, which is spoken out by the screen reader. So those kind of issues are very important if we want to actually make internet accessible to everyone, and that is, I think, that is the objective of universal acceptance itself as well. So I hope that we will take care of that also.
Thank you, sir. So thank you very much for the question and thank you very much for elaborate answers which panelist has given. Let us all clap for the entire panel who has given a lot of inputs for the technological part of universal acceptance, and we would like to honor them. May I request Nitin Wali from ICANN South Asia to please come and do this honor. Please bring. First of all, we would like to give a certificate of tree plantation, and in the name of Sally, we would like to plant several trees which will remain for years together, and we will see. Monitor the progress of these trees with the URL.
And I hope it's universal acceptance. Thank you. How fantastic is that?
To Mr. Edmund Blue. To Santosh, T. Santosh. And Mr. Balindu. May I request all the panelists to have a group photograph? And now I am requesting the next panel, which is the case studies presentation on universal acceptance, to be ready. Chaired by Additional Secretary Miti. Sir is already here. And we have Nitin Walia, who will be presenting on behalf of Rajasthan government. And we have, and I request Edmund Chung to kindly stay on the dais for the next session also. Thank you.